As my friend Lila Leff, the educator, founder, innovator of the Umoja program that's so successful in Chicago public schools, likes to say, everybody thinks they're an expert on education because everybody had one. Well, we all didn't have the same education, now did we? So I'm here really to tell two kinds of stories. One, the story of being a student, and one, the story of being a teacher. All to dovetail into the fact that I am deeply concerned about the public education landscape that seems to silo children and teachers and students, that seems to pit one against the other, forces adults to take sides. And in the process, my concern is that it ultimately punishes the neighborhood school in behalf of charters and magnets and IBs and other selective enrollment possibilities. The socioeconomic class was the class that I didn't know I belonged to until I started going to school. But what I came to learn was your socioeconomic class very often determines the classroom that you end up in. I'm a Rolling Meadows kid. My parents moved from Albany Park in a basement apartment to Rolling Meadows, which was a blue-collar suburb out in the northwest part of the county. And we weren't greeted warmly, I gotta tell you. Arlington Heights and Palatine called us rolling ghettos. And the reason they did was because, you know, we were tract houses built on bulldozed cornfields. Remember the Pete Seeger song, Houses Made of Ticky-Tacky, They All Look the Same? Well, that was us. We did. But to my mother and my father and my sister and me, we were living in a palace. I went to elementary school in Rolling Meadows, and I went to junior high in Rolling Meadows, and I gave my 8th grade graduation speech. I was an A student. Fearfully, I have to tell you, I remember most of the speech. And it was pretty cliche written, and I compared education to mountain climbing, and I had a big finish, where I would say, I feel that I speak for the entire graduating class. Unfortunately, what I heard come out of my mouth was, I spiel that I feek. And I was so shocked. Mercifully, nobody laughed. I got through it, and I got to college, to high school, Palatine High School. Rolling Meadows didn't have a high school. So some of us went to Palatine, some of us went to Forest View. I went to Palatine. And it was a slow dawning for me, frankly. I didn't realize quite in the beginning why my classes seemed so remedial, why my books seemed so simple. And I noticed that other freshmen were carrying around some other books. One of them was a paperback called The Bridge at Andau. It was written by James Michener. It was about the Hungarian Revolution. It's a journalistic account. And they were buying it in the bookstore. They were taking it to their classes. So I went to the bookstore. I bought it. And I read it. And I loved it. And I go into my 3rd period English class, and my teacher, Mary Lavelle, says, because she knows it's not assigned in our class, why did you buy it? And I said, why aren't we reading it? Well, Mrs. Lavelle understood tracking. I did not. She went downstairs to guidance, and she said, take this kid and put her in honors. Guidance pushed back. The head guidance counselor called me in, and she said, with an abundance of solicitude, I must say, dear, do you feel that you're up to it? As a Rolling Meadows girl? Well, Mary Lavelle won that day for me. 2nd semester of freshman year, I was in honors classes. But I looked around, and most, if not all, of the kids in my classes didn't live where I lived. They lived in Plum Grove. They lived in Inverness. They lived in much bigger houses with much more beautiful lawns. But you know, that was great. That was terrific. Today, we call that diversity. You know? Mary Lavelle, freshman year. Rod Bott, sophomore year. Alfred Court, junior year. Those teachers transformed my life. Not just my education, but I honestly believe my life. And so I was off to college. The only kid in my family at that moment, only girl, to have headed to college. And what did I want to be? I wanted to be a teacher because I was inspired by teachers. And so, my first year of teaching out in the suburbs, I have 5 preparations. I have 1 honors English, I have 4 bottom track classes. The principal who hires me says, look, the honors classes are your reward for having to do these mugger senior kids for 4 classes. And all of a sudden, I saw my life replay. My honors kids came from West Dundee, affluent, by and large. My bottom trackers, they came from Carpentersville, blue collar. And my books, I had more books for my honors kids than I could shoehorn into a single year. Bottom trackers, not so much. And one book comes to mind. It was Dantes Inferno, not the John Ciardi translation, which is so fantastic, but a translation I had never seen and could not possibly teach. But I taught Dantes Inferno that year. I taught it from Cliff's Notes, because Cliff's Notes had this fantastic diagram of hell. And my bottom trackers, man, they really got into hell. They love the idea. They love the idea, you know, that the sin, that the crime fits the punishment. And they especially love that circle of hell where liars are up to their necks in excrement. As one kid said to me, Miss Marin, bullshit earns bullshit. And I said, well, you know, I think you've understood this. How great is that? How great is that? 2 girls in my bottom track class were straight A students. And I wanted to do for them what Mary Lavelle had done for me. I wanted to put them in an honors track. And so I went to them and said, let's do this. And they said, no, no. They'd been in high school almost 4 years. This was the last semester. They weren't going to change. They said, we don't even know those kids. We don't hang out with those kids. We're staying right where we are, getting the A's we're getting here. I couldn't turn their tracking train around. I wanted to, but I couldn't. What I worry about in Chicago right now is that neighborhood schools are the bottom track. They're at the bottom of the ladder. And the rungs up the ladder are the charters and the IBs and the selective enrollment and the magnets. I would never tell you that high achievers shouldn't be challenged. Never. But I would tell you that all children need to be challenged. All children. And without reform, meaningful reform, we're still with a have and have not system where we more easily blame principals and teachers and bad parenting than we do taking a look at the system, the socioeconomic consequences of that system. I think we have to break the mindset of the silos. We've got to stop pitting one school against another, one kind of school against another. You know, neighborhood schools, you know this, can't counsel out. Other schools, more elite schools, can if a kid underperforms. And then that kid who's counseled out goes back to the neighborhood school. Kids with special needs, special learning problems, do not easily find places in the higher rungs of the ladder. More often than not, they're in the neighborhood school too. And the rare charter that takes care of hard-to-serve kids, I can think of one on the west side right now that's in danger of closing for lack of funding. It's tough. It's very tough. Rita Pearson, great educator, fantastic speaker, talks about every kid needs a champion. Every teacher needs a champion. Every school needs a champion. Thank God I had champions. She also talks about essential needs of human relationships, that it's all about you and me, and us talking together. You know, if you don't ask the right question, you get the wrong answer, I think. Not whether there should be IBs or charters or magnets, but whether there is a good result out there for everyone. You can't ask whether high achievers deserve options until you say, who's a high achiever? Was I? You know, define your terms, because I think there are a lot more of them than we know. Charters were designed to be laboratories of innovation. They were designed to teach the system to be a better system. But in Chicago, way too often, charters don't talk to neighborhood schools and neighborhood schools don't talk to charters. There is this combat mentality in Chicago. Emmanuel administration, teachers union. It is a jagged dividing line. So what do you do? What do you do? You forge a relationship, I would argue, with a lawmaker. You find one. Alderman, lawmaker, talk to him or her. And don't just talk to him once. Talk to him more often. Drop by the office, write a letter, send him an email, ask for a conversation, go get a cup of coffee. This is a conversation, not a press conference, not a rally, not a demonstration. It's a conversation. And I believe that there has to be more of that than we see in this city. And then there's got to be reconciliation. The best schools have something to learn from schools around them. Neighborhood schools have something to learn from schools around them. We all have something to learn. But we got to get out of our silos. You know, I was thinking, Northern Ireland and the British worked it out, for God's sake. Could we not have a peace accord here that is more promising? You know, I'm just a teacher who left the classroom a long time ago, so I don't know in a granular way, day to day, all the things that you know. But I do know this, and I say it all the time. I have been transformed by teachers who were my advocates, who took me to a place I otherwise would never have gone. They gave me opportunities, removed the barriers, and they took class out of my classroom. Where you come from should not determine where you're going. Not ever.